Hello everyone, and welcome to the third video in my series, Seeking the Great American Novel. In the last video, we looked at the origins of the term about 150 years ago. Going forward in this series, we'll be looking at later attempts to define the Great American Novel, but the main method will be to look at specific novels that have been frequently called Great American Novels, to think about the qualities that they share, and to attempt to extract or derive a kind of a consensus definition of the term by looking at those individual cases. This is pretty much the standard way of defining anything. In this case, it does mean starting with the existing canon of American literature, but with the goal ultimately of expanding both the number and the type of novels. So not just reinscribing that canon of great American novels, but actually perhaps accelerating the process by which new novels might be admitted to that canon. In this video, I want to announce the 5 novels that I've chosen for the 19th century phase of the project. I've also decided to pair each of these 19th century novels with a novel from our own times that in some way invokes some of the same themes of its predecessor. Most of these 19th century novels are really kind of out of sync with our own times, and in some cases, aspects of them are downright offensive to modern sensibilities. But they've so frequently been referred to as great American novels, especially in past generations, that I think any attempt to define what is meant by the great American novel and how that term has evolved has to somehow involve these. Many of these novels have been seen as powerful indictments of some aspect of American history or American society. The almost wholesale destruction of the Native American population. The way that the quest for religious freedom as it played out in the U.S. would often turn into a kind of religious persecution in its own right. The patriarchal aspects of society. The way that commercial or material success was often predicated on the exploitation of the natural environment or of some group of people, and above all, the devastation of American slavery. When 19th century authors take up these themes, the result is often painful reading, especially today. That's partly because the nature of the subject matter, which was painful at the time, but I think it's also partly because the authors themselves were products of the very societies that they were wanting to critique. So in some ways, they reproduce elements of those societies in their writing. Now, I've read almost all of these novels at least once, but never with an eye to this question of the great American novel. So that's a kind of prism through which I will be approaching these works. The first novel I'll be looking at is James Fenimore Cooper's The Last of the Mohicans. This is a book that takes place during the French and Indian War, which pitted the French colonists and allied Native American tribes against British colonists and the Native American tribes that were allied with them. But what's most interesting about this novel, I think, is not that conflict, but instead the relationship between whites and Native Americans. It takes place in what's now upstate New York, but what was then the Northeast frontier. I don't want to give away too much of the plot, but I think I need to give away a little bit in order to tell you why I've chosen the other novel that I'm going to pair with this one. So if you don't want a plot spoiler, you can zip through the next, 30 seconds of this video. Briefly, what happens is that 2 daughters of a lieutenant colonel on the British side are kidnapped by a Huron scout allied with the French. A party of 5 men then set out to save the women. The party includes a white frontiersman and his two Native American friends, a father and a son. The son is the last of the Mohicans of the book's title. I had a hard time choosing a novel to pair with The Last of the Mohicans. What I was really looking for initially was something that I don't think exists, which would be a kind of telling of the same story through the eyes of one of the Native American characters. If you've heard of such a book, let me know. I would love to read it. Instead, I looked at some other Native American literature. I've been reading several works, and I've tentatively settled on Louise Erdrich's The Round House. This is a book in which 4 teenage Ojibwa boys and a father set out to right a wrong done to a Native American woman. The next novel on my 19th century reading list is The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne. This is a book that is set in Puritan New England, and it features a woman, Hester Prynne, a married woman, who has another man's child. I haven't yet decided for sure on the more contemporary novel to pair with this one, but I'm considering Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale, which I've not read yet, but I understand that it's set in also in New England in a kind of Puritan future as opposed to the Puritan past of Hawthorne's novel. Next on my list is Herman Melville's Moby Dick, which is about a whaling captain and his obsessive quest to kill a whale. I haven't yet decided for sure what to pair this one with, but I'm thinking about Linda Hogan's People of the Whale, which seems to portray a very different relationship to the whale and as a species and to nature in general. Melville's novel has an interesting history in that it was largely forgotten in the decades after he died, but then rediscovered in the 1920s or thereabouts. The opposite happened with the next novel on my list, Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin. This is a book that was enormously influential when it first came out. It's attributed with helping to end slavery, or in any case, turning public sentiment against slavery, and it was very widely translated. So it was popular really throughout the world. Uncle Tom, a middle-aged slave, was perceived very differently by the first generation of readers, that is Stowe's contemporaries, and later generations, including many African American readers. One of those critics was James Baldwin, and partly for that reason, I've decided to pair Uncle Tom's Cabin with Baldwin's Go Tell It on the Mountain. One of the themes common to both of these novels is Christianity. Stowe shows slavery as incompatible with Christian tenets, and she makes Uncle Tom into an almost saint-like figure. Christianity is again a theme in Go Tell It on the Mountain, but here it serves a different purpose and has different influences. So this is one of the themes that I think will be interesting to follow in both of these novels. Finally, the last book on the 19th century list is Huckleberry Finn, or I should say The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. I'm showing you the frontispiece because I've lost the cover of this book. This is not the edition I'll be using, but it's the edition that I have here. This book, of course, was written by Mark Twain and also concerns slavery. It's about a white boy from an impoverished background, from really extreme poverty, and with an abusive father, and his relationship with an escaped slave named Jim. They travel down the Mississippi River, and the book is exploring their relationship with one another and also with society as a whole. Huckleberry Finn is also, like Uncle Tom's Cabin, a controversial book today. It's one of the books that's frequently banned. Toni Morrison has called it an amazing, troubling book, and partly for that reason, I've decided to choose what's perhaps her best known novel, Beloved, which I've got here in an audio version, as the book that I'm pairing with Huckleberry Finn. Beloved is based on the true story of a woman who escaped slavery by crossing the Ohio River. So again, this is just the first phase of my Seeking the Great American Novel project. I thought that some of you might be interested in reading some of these novels and making it a more collaborative kind of effort. It's designed not to go very quickly, partly because of my reading habits. I tend to be a rather slow and deliberate reader, and also because I like to vary my reading. And for that reason, my next couple of videos will probably turn to a different subject. I'm hoping to launch my new series on the suspense genre in fiction and film. So this one will kind of be interrupted by that, but then I'll be going back to the Great American Novel probably in the early summer. That gives other people some time to read some of these works as well and to be thinking about them. When I do return to this series, I'm going to begin with a video acknowledging some of the challenges that I'm encountering in my method of defining the Great American Novel. And then in videos after that, we'll just go through the novels one by one, both the 19th century novels and also the more contemporary ones. And I haven't yet quite decided whether to read the more contemporary one first and then the 19th century one, or the other way around. But in any case, the idea is to sort of juxtapose them with the hope that each reveals aspects of the other that might have been invisible had they not been read together. That's all for today. Thank you for watching.